Welcome to the Think Small podcast, hypergrowth for small businesses. So, what's slowing you down?
Hi again, everybody. It's Rob Godlewski with the Think Small podcast. And today our special guest is Mario Lamar. Mario is a partner with the Allen Bryson Lamar law firm based in Longview, Texas. Mario, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks a lot for having me, Rob. I look forward to talking with you.
Yeah, it's going to be a great conversation. So Mario, first of all, tell me a little bit about the Allen Bryson Lamar law firm. What you really specialize in and what problems you're solving for your clients and customers.
Yeah, so I'm happy to share all that. I really enjoy talking about what we do, like a lot of folks you have on your podcast. Allen Bryson Lamar, we started, over 10 years ago. I've been with the firm since I was a law clerk. So my second year of law school, I started clerking for the firm. I went to work there after law school, and I've been there ever since. As you mentioned, we have an office in Longview, Texas, which is East Texas, and then we have an office in DFW, so Dallas-Fort Worth. There are a number of lawyers. We have, 5 lawyers of counsel, so really 6 lawyers, some law clerks, and 2 support personnel, paralegal and legal assistant, who are just fantastic. But the firm specializes, back to your question, we specialize in commercial litigation, creditors' rights, and in construction law. We have some other areas of practice, having a number of lawyers. There are some other things we do, but really the firm's focus is on helping businesses collect debt, helping businesses with litigation issues, oftentimes related to commercial collections, and then helping businesses with their contracts and then construction law. It's kind of a subset of what we do. So, we try to, as we're growing, we're trying to keep our focus. That is an important part of our strategy. But, at the same time, you don't want to be, I think one author calls it, you don't want to be distracted by the shiny things, right? So that's been important to us. And
Mario, I say that to my clients all the time, right? Beware the shiny ball.
Yep. So we are trying our best to keep focused on what we do. But one of the differentiators for our firm is that we want to communicate with the client. We really care about that relationship, very relationship focused. One of the biggest complaints that I hear from clients who've worked with other lawyers is a lack of communication. So, at the firm, we really, really stress and focus on client communication, providing, frequent and timely updates to the client, having a system of updating the clients. And I think that helps a lot with managing, either their collections or their litigation or even on contract matters. So we really focus on client communication. And the other thing we do that's we find to be a differentiator is we will take cases on contingency. So we'll take commercial collection cases on contingency.
Interesting.
Yeah. And that's, the pricing model for lawyers is changing. Just like some of the other things in the industry, lawyers are, the clients are not wanting to pay, these rates, which go up by the day. I don't know how much you follow some of this stuff, but there's a lot of lawyers now who charge over $1,000 an hour for their services.
Right.
And clients, when they're looking to collect an account that, there may be some question of collectability, they don't want to throw good money after bad. And a lot of law firms, still ask them to take that leap. Well, we have moved away from that, and we understand that pricing for lawyers is changing. We want to be on the forefront of that. And so we're doing a lot more litigation on contingency. We're also doing, a lot more of our contract work, helping companies with their contracts and transactional issues on a flat rate basis. And so we're trying to be at the forefront of the dynamic pricing that I think is going to be expected from law firms over the next 10 years and to move away from the billable app. So it's exciting times, and, we really want to be on the cutting edge of giving our clients those options. And I think that's helped us grow, and it's helped us differentiate ourselves from the competition.
That's really interesting, Mario. And being in the professional services realm myself,
Yeah.
that is a big question. Is not only how are you charging for your services as a small to mid-sized professional services firm, or in your case specifically a law firm. But how are you showing the value that you're, to your clients and customers that you're charging for that? And I get it. Some people, whether 500 or 750 or $1,000 an hour is valuable, isn't necessarily seen up front. And I applaud your firm for taking that leap, because you're probably going to be able to attract more clients just because of that kind of methodology of engagement, right? It's easier for the client to engage with you.
Right. And yeah, we are happy to take on that risk with the client. And I think that level of trust is much appreciated. Yeah. And the flexibility too. I mean, there are clients that we have that will send, certain accounts. They'll say, hey, collect this on contingency. And then, they may have a larger account that they feel is collectible, but they need a law firm to help them negotiate a resolution or file a lawsuit, take next steps basically. And they may give that to us on hourly. So, flexibility. Flexibility is a key component there, and giving the clients, the opportunity to choose is really important to our firm. So that's been a big, it's been a big point of success for us in growing. And I think our clients have really appreciated having those options.
Interesting. And just for those in our audience who may not be totally aware of what, billing on contingency is essentially you're not getting paid until you're able to collect that bad debt for your client. So you then would get a portion of that collected receivable as payment for your services, correct?
Yep, that's exactly right. We'll have clients, the hard costs involved, like the filing fee or the, cost of sending a demand letter, the mailing costs, however nominal that would be. Those will still be, the client will be responsible for those hard costs. But yes, otherwise, we don't get paid unless we get the client paid. And so we, like I said, it's been very successful for us. We're good at what we do, which allows us to take on that risk. So it's, and it allows us to show value to the client too. So they love, you can imagine clients love getting checks from their lawyers instead of having to send payments to their lawyers. So it makes our job fun. Being able to, go meet a client and hand them a big check is a, hugely rewarding part of what we do every day. So yeah, it's been nice, and I really enjoy it. And for the small businesses, especially that we do work for, it allows them to go after bad debts that they may not, they may otherwise write off. And it, allows their business to be far more successful because they're actually able to collect these receivables that, if a law firm insisted on hourly rates, probably would not be worth pursuing in many cases. So
that's right.
In that sense, I think we've helped us to solve this issue for a lot of clients who, question whether to go after their receivables, whether to take those next steps. And, that's a portion of revenue at the end of the year that those clients are writing off and saying, hey, forget about it. And we're able to, add that to their bottom line. So we feel really good about what we do. And it is a problem, especially in today's, kind of financial or economic environment. I think it's something a lot of companies are tackling in this very moment with tariffs and other kind of financial headwinds. It obviously the impact has been different on different industries, but we've seen a big uptick in clients needing help with this kind of thing.
Interesting. So, but you must have a high level of confidence in those contingency relationships with clients that you're able to do the work in the first place, right? That you're going to be able to collect a significant portion, if not all of that bad debt, in order to tell a client, you don't have to pay me a dime until we actually do our job.
Yes, that's right. And we're, several of our lawyers are super lawyers. We have a ton of experience with both state law collections in bankruptcy when it comes to that, going to federal court if we have to, as well as arbitration. We've kind of run the gambit of different venues and different kind of areas of practice that get implicated when you're going after a debtor and trying to get them to pay. So our expertise is, pretty vast in this area. We do a lot of liens. We file a lot of liens for our clients. A lot of our clients are in the construction industry or construction adjacent. like oil and gas service
Notice a lot of
companies.
oil and gas, right?
Yep, correct. And so those clients have the ability in many cases, if they can get their AR to us quickly enough to file liens, that's a huge point of pressure that we have to collect for our clients, and we love to utilize it when we get the account in time. So we file liens all over Texas and all over the country, in a lot of different states. A lot of our clients are national, and so we're a Texas-based firm. We are licensed in Texas. We can oftentimes file the lien and take those initial steps without having to engage local counsel somewhere else. But if we do have to take those next steps, say file a lawsuit in another state, we have a network of local counsel that we work with, and can utilize if we need to file elsewhere. So that's been a big growing. That network has also been, something that's allowed us to be really successful and represent some big companies and clients who work nationwide. And our network of local counsel, one of the things we've started to do is just finding other lawyers who do collections like us on contingency. And we've been pretty successful. So we've found lawyers in a number of states who we can work with to collect the debt in those states. So that's been helpful for growing the business as well, and allowing us to quarterback collections for national companies. And so we enjoy those relationships. They're really important to our success as well.
So Mario, let's dig in a little bit to the performance of the firm over its 10-year lifespan, right? And you've been with the firm since it was founded. So,
right. Yeah.
So you've seen it all, literally.
I have.
Let's talk about a time when, I'm sure when you were starting, you were out there trying to, secure new clients and onboard new business. But I'm sure there was probably a time when revenue started to contract or deals weren't coming in as fast. Was there such a time? When was it? And how did you help navigate the firm through that period?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I will say in a couple of different iterations, the firm's even older than 10 years. We go back to the late 2006, in a couple of different iterations of partners and folks involved. But in the current iteration, we're basically coming up on about 10 years. So right. As far as those challenges that you mentioned, we're small enough that the biggest challenge I'll say one of the biggest challenges that we face is not so much as having periods where we aren't necessarily, bringing in business. The bigger challenge has been periods where we don't have the capacity to essentially handle the amount of business we have. Those are, at least in my mind, those have been the more challenging times for the firm.
Sure. So kind of the reverse scenario, right? You're
right.
Navigating growth via capacity constraints.
Right, exactly. And so in those moments, we're small enough that it takes a lot of buckle down from the folks we have, and late nights and trying to push those files so that we can get successful results for our clients. It's a lot of it is just the folks who have been here are great, and we've had to work extra hard in moments like that. The challenge for us is just growing the firm and having finding ways to retain great people is one of the key challenges probably for any growing law firm. But that's one that we've dealt with, and we're trying to find good options for our folks to make the firm attractive and make them want to stay for as long as we can have them, basically. So
sure.
We want this to be a place where people come to grow their career, grow their abilities, and hopefully stay the long term. But that's been a big challenge. There probably have been times where we haven't quite had as much business as maybe we would have wanted. I think back to 2019, 2020, 2021. There are periods where we had a lot of focus on one big client.
Okay.
And
an over concentration problem is what I call that.
Yes, exactly, Rob. And so that client, it eventually went out of business, and luckily we started to see what was happening and started to diversify. But that was a challenging period for us. As far as diversifying clients and going out and getting business, a lot of it was just, phone calls, talking to the right people, getting connections, networking, really not a lot on the marketing side at that point. But it was just a lot of kind of the old school networking, to start to diversify away from just basically the single client. And in that process, I think we learned a lot about how we can be successful. We learned a lot about the different, financial kind of options we can give our clients. It was around that period we began offering contingency options to clients. And,
Okay.
Yeah. And so
really kind of forced you to change your business model a little bit in that, facing with a huge problem of customer concentration. And I lived through that in one time in my career experience, Mario. So I'm very familiar with that. At one point, one of our customers represented 80% of our total business. And we were a manufacturer of consumer goods. And that's a problem. So that experience essentially, jump started the thought of, hey, wait a minute, how can we change our business model, which you alluded to earlier, spoke about earlier, was that change in how we're actually charging for our services. So dig into that a little bit. Did one of the partners just kind of say, hey, we're going about this the wrong way?
Right. Yeah, I think it was a combination of that and looking at the success we had for this client who, pretty similar to you, they represented, I think, about 80% of our business at the time.
Wow. Yeah.
And looking at, how we had been so successful for them and finding, okay, how can we do this for other companies? How can we provide that level of value for other companies? And I think it was, partner meeting. We've been talking for a while about, contingency maybe being an option, and taking a look at the success rate we were having. It became pretty clear that we could do this kind of work on contingency and be successful for clients. Mm-hmm. And so we took that leap, with a few clients, a few matters, and then it's now permeated into a huge portion of our business. And, a lot of times I prefer to take a case on contingency if it makes sense for the client, because you avoid some of the more difficult aspects of handling a case. A lot of what we do is on the front end is when you're handling a matter hourly, talking about the budget, talking about these questions of collectability, and really making sure the juice is worth the squeeze. And so when you can take an account on contingency, share in that risk, those conversations are still important. It's still important for, the matter to be collectible, of course, for us and for the client too. But it carries less weight, and the client doesn't have to, do the mental gymnastics of trying to figure out if they're going to be able to pay the lawyer to really run it down. And so, flexibility has been crucial in our growth especially over the last 5 to 6 years. And it's really allowed us to diversify our business model and our clients. And it's allowed us to represent a lot of folks that just wouldn't otherwise be able to have a lawyer involved.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
So let's dig into that a little bit, though. So you decided to, oh my gosh, we really need to, lessen our reliance on this one huge client who looks like is going out of business, and you guys were right. But at the same time, offering a very different business model. So walk us through, how long that took, what was the reaction, and when did you really start to see traction for this effort?
It took a couple of years for it to really take hold. The first thing is figuring out, okay, how do we actually work this into our engagement? What does that look like? What is, an engagement letter's often the agreement between lawyers and their clients on how they're going to handle a case or, a number of cases. And, it's very simple when you just have, client, you're going to pay hourly these rates for the work, and you'll get invoiced. But now we had to take our, standard engagement and change it for these contingency options. So that really was the first step, is, identifying some clients who wanted that kind of flexibility in pricing, and then, figuring out, okay, what do we need to change for our agreements with the clients to allow that. Another factor that, when you're making this change as a lawyer, you have to decide, okay, what is that contingency rate going to be? What makes sense for the client? What makes sense?
Sure.
And so, we looked at what other firms were doing, and kind of went with that approach, and we, have found success with it. In a lot of ways, it worked out without a lot of trial and error, which is good for us. You could imagine that process taking a long time, but we kind of stumbled on rates that made sense, and clients who were willing to go this route, and kind of the rest is history. It's worked out for us, but there wasn't a ton of market research or looking into, okay, how, what's the sign, what's looking at all the numbers and figuring out what exactly the price point needs to be. We kind of just stumbled on it, and it's
yeah, I bet
been profitable for us, and it's really worked out. But yeah, there, from there, we've, just been kind of blowing and going since then. It's really allowed our business to snowball. A lot of clients in the construction world don't, they're not used to having the ability to use law firms on a contingency basis. So having that option has led to a fair amount of, just word of mouth referrals. That has been our number one proponent as far as, marketing goes, which it's not, really marketing. It's just, we do a good job for our clients, and they tell other people about us. But in the early,
that's definitely part of the marketing mix, but a very organic one for sure.
Right, exactly. And so, that super organic word of mouth marketing was instrumental in the early 2020s to growing the firm and diversifying.
Right.
And since then, we've started to utilize some more traditional marketing efforts, but or maybe not more traditional, but less organic. But to answer your question, yeah, that's kind of how we implemented it. It was not some super detailed plan. We kind of saw this as an option to offer clients, and clients really, like that flexibility. And from there, we've tried to utilize it more and more with what we do.
So I'm going to connect this part of the discussion to something you mentioned earlier, Mario, and that is the firm's long-term strategy is to stay focused on very specific areas. And one of the things, I don't know if you did this consciously when you were changing up your go-to-market plan and your payment method, but you essentially chose to offer new and different products or services to your existing client base, meaning you weren't going out and finding new clients in new industries. You were essentially retaining and expanding the client base you already had. And from a strategic marketing standpoint, Mario, I'm going to give you a little credit here. That's the easiest and simplest place to find growth, right? It's always the nice shiny ball to go out and find new clients, but it's the easiest thing in the world is to find more business from existing clients. And that's exactly essentially what you did. But let's talk about that concentrated area. You're hyper focused on some very specific, and I'll call them intertwined market verticals. You're hyper focused on construction. You're hyper focused on the oil and gas industry. And I'm sure, and I know both of those spaces have very common features. So it's not a huge leap to go from one to the other. So talk to us a little bit about that and how you're maintaining that focus as the firm goes on.
Yeah, and I'll kind of explain to you a little bit about what we do in those spaces, because there was some additional types of work we added over the last 5 to 6 years, especially in the construction world. We saw clients needing help with things that went outside of simply filing liens and collecting commercial accounts. Some of that was related to construction defect work, helping clients who've had bad construction work, either in a commercial sense or, residential. And that's been one kind of branch off of what we do in the construction world. That is quite a bit different from what we had done in the past. So, to answer, part of my answer is, well, we've wanted to be super hyper focused, but there are some areas that we noticed, hey, look, these things, people are having a hard time finding lawyers to help with. I think we, we have experience in these areas based on what we've done in the past. I think we can, grow what we do and include this kind of subset of construction law.
Right.
So the defect litigation has been one area that we've grown the firm through. But, as far as existing clients and expanding what we do with them, and being hyper focused in construction and commercial collections, that, that remains at the heart of what we do.
Right.
A lot of it is just internally being very focused when we get intake calls with, cases that may be outside of the areas that we practice in, just being able to say no. It's hard when you're a small business because oftentimes you feel like, hey, look, I have the capacity to take these things on. But it's just as important what you say no to is what you say yes to. And so we've tried to restrain ourselves from saying yes to those things that are kind of outside of what we do. But we've noticed that, there are areas within, construction law and commercial litigation that, we can help clients and we can be really a factor for change as far as kind of the lawyer market goes. The biggest one I touched on is just those defect cases. And that's an area that we've seen tremendous growth in as far as the firm goes. And it's an area of just, again, of looking at what people need and how we can help. Because there are a lot of people, especially in Texas, that have bad contractors and they need help, going after those contractors. That's, the defect type litigation's been really helpful for the firm as far as, allowing us to grow, but it's a different animal. We have to be really smart about what type of cases we take because people get, screwed over by bad contractors all the time. In Texas, one of the things that I don't think is the same in many other jurisdictions is you don't need a particular kind of license to be a general contractor. And so a lot of times there are just rogue bad contractors out there doing bad work.
Oh, interesting.
People need help, basically with their options and taking next steps against those contractors. So it's a underserved area of the law here. And, we have been successful in helping people, take those options and go after bad contractors. So that's an example of something we've, a shiny ball sort of that we've implemented into our practice where, maybe prudence would have said, hey, don't get distracted by this. I'm happy we did because it's allowed us to grow our construction practice and offer more services to clients. But, identifying those areas of, where we can expand what we do, but without going too far afield from what we're specialized in and what we do best.
Right. So Mario, let's transition a little bit and talk about the firm's future, right? What does, with your hyper focus on some specific industry verticals and kind of, I'll use the phrase landing and expanding within your current clients, what does the next 3 to 5 years look like for the firm?
Oh, that's a great question, Rob. We're in a probably unique situation compared to, I think, some of the other businesses you have on the podcast because we're really in the early days of a pretty aggressive growth strategy. So our goal over the next 3 years, and this is probably we're about 4 months into this process. We want to grow the firm by double. So we want to double the amount of lawyers we have. Our goal is to quadruple revenue over, 4x revenue over the next 3 years. And, our strategy in doing that is it's one, finding great people and retaining them. That's, I've mentioned that as a challenge. I think that's a challenge for a lot of small businesses, but in the legal market, it is it's the challenge of all challenges because especially DFW is saturated with, lawyers, finding lawyers who are at other firms looking to transition is difficult. We've found more success with hiring young lawyers out of law school. But, finding and keeping great people is kind of step number one. The other is, finding and keeping great clients. And for us, that traditionally looked like word of mouth marketing. It's started to expand. We're starting to utilize more or less organic marketing, beginning with, some LinkedIn and Google type ads. Very early days for us. I mean, we've only been working with a marketing company for the last 4 months. So it's an early days for the firm as far as kind of our less organic marketing strategy, but we've seen some good results so far. It's definitely been encouraging, and the third kind of aspect of, I think, our growth strategy is just the case value and being, profitability metrics and looking at those types of things and making sure we're taking the right cases and we're growing the right way.
That's good.
Within those, focused areas of practice, and just being, really smart about the cases we take and trying to be hyper efficient as far as, the time we spend and all of that. So, and I'd say the last one that we really haven't implemented yet, but it's important to our growth strategy over the next few years is client satisfaction and finding ways to measure that. So, so I think, where we'll end up is utilizing some of the different survey options out there to get feedback from clients, see where we can improve, and just continue to do really good work for clients and find those areas that, hey, look, this is something we can improve on, and creating those systems and, procedures to implement that into our practice. So a lot of it is about being really efficient and coming up with systems and processes to allow this growth to take hold. That's less of I guess that's an important part of the strategy as well, is it's just having those systems and procedures in place, which, when you're 6 lawyers, it's not as necessary, but, we can see when we get to the point where we have 12 lawyers, having those types of systems in place are going to be, very crucial. So Absolutely. That's something we're also starting to work on now and utilizing some of the different technology out there to allow us to be successful in implementing systems and procedures for the firm.
Okay. So Mario, those are incredible growth goals, and I appreciate your specificity in those growth goals, right? You need to double the amount of lawyers and quadruple the revenue in 3 years. So good that you have they're time-based. I love that. But Mario, let me ask you, what would be holding you back, or what would be getting in your way of achieving those goals?
I would say, Rob, the number one thing for us would just be finding the right people and keeping them. That is, that's kind of issue number one. And it's also probably the most important thing that we focus on, is just, one, finding recruiting, and two, coming up with, good resources and reasons for people to want to stay with the firm. We've done a really good job of that, but as we venture into kind of a more competitive landscape, as far as lawyers and legal professionals go, we're going to have to have better, resources and better retention programs, or things that, are going to make people say, hey, I want to stay at this firm for the next decade or for my entire career, hopefully. And so I think that's one area that we're going to have to, continue to tackle. But it is, like I said, I mean, the DFW market especially is hyper competitive. And so you really have to differentiate yourself from other employers when you're going out and talking to candidates. And for us, that's, that is just absolutely crucial if we're going to achieve these type of goals. So yeah, that's been a big focal point for us, and in an area where I know there will be additional challenges.
Well, Mario, what a great discussion. It's been a real pleasure getting to know your firm and you, and learning about your really interesting, pivots and transitions you've had to make in a relatively short, life of the firm. You've got some really specific growth goals ahead of you, and I'm sure you're going to achieve those with flying colors. So Mario Lamar with the Allen Bryson Lamar Law Firm in Dallas, Texas, and Longview, Texas. Mario, thanks so much for joining us on the Think Small podcast today.
Thanks a lot, Rob, for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
Welcome to the Think Small podcast, hypergrowth for small businesses. So, what's slowing you down?